Fluoride is in your toothpaste, in your drinking water, and even in the dental office. But could there be a potential that you're having too much fluoride? In this video, I want to talk about the benefits of fluoride, specifically when it comes to your teeth, but also the risks of having too much fluoride. So what is fluoride? Fluoride is a natural mineral that's found on rocks and other parts of the earth, but it's really good at strengthening our teeth. So our teeth are made up of these crystals. Our enamel is made up of crystals called hydroxyapatite. These hydroxyapatite crystals have this hydroxide ion that's attached to it. But if you swap out that hydroxide ion for a fluoride ion, which is what happens when your teeth are in contact with fluoride, then that tooth gets a lot stronger. This is because in those hydroxide ions, those electrons are spread further apart. Versus a fluoride ion, those electrons are closer together, meaning that whole crystal molecule, that fluorapatite molecule, is a lot more compact. Everything is way more tighter together versus a typical hydroxyapatite crystal. That means it's way more resistant to decay and way more resistant to acids. So fluorapatite will break down at a pH of 4.5. Your typical hydroxyapatite crystal will break down at 5.5. So that means something has to be way more acidic to start damaging a tooth exposed to fluoride. So because of this, fluoride is a very effective tool to prevent cavities. And this is why it's found in so many different dental products like toothpaste, mouthwash, or fluoride varnish. Now that being said, do you need to have fluoride? No. Our ancestors survived without fluoride. We can survive without fluoride. And without fluoride, it's still possible to avoid getting cavities. But it's going to be harder. There's no doubt about that. And if there's measures you take with your diet and proper brushing and flossing, you can still avoid it. So at the end of this video, if you really want to stay adamant against fluoride, then there's ways of getting around it. And I would also encourage you to watch some of my other content on how to keep your teeth clean and how to make sure you prevent getting cavities in other ways if you do choose to do that. Now, the main thing in regards to your teeth that happen with too much fluoride is something called dental fluorosis. Basically, it's when these spots form on your teeth as your teeth are developing. Now, keep in mind that almost every single case of dental fluorosis is mild, but more severe cases can be brown or more pitted looking enamel. And this is when your teeth can actually start to get a little bit weaker. So how does fluorosis happen? It happens when children are consuming too much fluoride as their teeth are developing. And this overconsumption of fluoride can lead to these spots on the teeth. But in case you're an adult watching this and thinking, well, I don't want to have that happen to my teeth, well, it's too late. This only happens as your teeth are still developing. So by the age of 8, there's no longer a risk for dental fluorosis. The most common cause of dental fluorosis is when children are using toothpaste and they, instead of spit it out, they accidentally swallow it. And they repeatedly do this. But a lot of people are also concerned about fluoride in the drinking water. Luckily, in the United States, fluoride in the drinking water is regulated. It's regulated to be at 0.7 parts per million, meaning for every liter, there is 0.7 milligrams of fluoride. Any quality study that you look at will show that this is a very safe dose to have in drinking water. And at the very same time, it's still very effective at fighting cavities. You might think that cavities are not a big deal, and why are we doing all these measures to prevent getting a cavity? Well, early childhood caries, or early childhood cavities, in other words, cavities that happen in children, is still a really big problem. It affects millions of people every single year. And the reason cavities are such a big deal, especially in children, is that these cavities can spread. They can get bigger and they can lead to infections and they can spread to the adult teeth. And these children that grow up with big cavities from a really young age are at such a disadvantage. And this goes on to affect the rest of their life because their chewing can be affected, especially if they start to lose their teeth early on, and they might end up in dentures or spending a ton of money on some type of tooth replacement. And the fact is that these tooth replacements are never going to be as good as your natural teeth. Ideally, we want our teeth to last a lifetime. And this is why it's so important, and this is why the fluoride levels are regulated in the US drinking water. Now, in terms of how safe this drinking water really is, I'm going to get into that in the later part of this video, so make sure you stick around if you want to hear about that. But now let's talk about toothpaste. So most toothpastes have a ppm, or parts per million, of fluoride at 1,000. So what that basically means is by weight, that percentage of fluoride is going to be at about 0.1%. So let's look at a 100-gram tube of toothpaste, a typical size tube of toothpaste. In that 100 grams, 0.1% of that is going to be fluoride. So there's going to be 0.1 grams, or in other words, 100 milligrams. Now, there are such things as prescription toothpastes. These have 5,000 ppm, so 5 times the amount of fluoride in them. Why do people get this? Well, it's only via prescription, and it's for people that really need it. And I'm telling you, when people get this toothpaste, they really need it. This is a great toothpaste for people that pretty much have cavities starting everywhere in their mouth. There's something called these incipient lesions. An incipient lesion is a cavity that's just starting off, but it's still in the enamel, and it hasn't penetrated through into the dentin yet, meaning that this cavity can still be reversed. But this is where this fluoride can really come into play, because this prescription toothpaste really makes a big difference for a lot of people in this position. But this toothpaste isn't given out to everybody. So for the sake of this video, I'm gonna stick to talking about that 1000 ppm regular tube of toothpaste. Now, when can fluoride become too much? So for an average adult, the lethal dose, meaning the amount necessary to potentially kill someone, is between 5 to 10 grams of fluoride in a single day. But let's talk numbers. How many tubes of toothpaste would someone need to eat in order to just get sick from fluoride? So this regular tube of toothpaste has 100 grams of toothpaste in it. And again, it is 1000 ppm, meaning 0.1% fluoride by weight. And that means it's going to be 100 milligrams of fluoride. The lower end of the dose to get someone sick from fluoride is going to be 5 milligrams per kilogram. So that is, for every kilogram someone weighs, that is 5 milligrams. So 5 milligrams per kilogram. We don't want to have that much. We want to have less than that. Actually, a lot less than that. Now, let's say that an adult weighs 70 kilograms. So 70 kilograms, 70 kgs. That is about 154 pounds. So let's do the math. 70 times 5 is 350. And that means that this person would have to eat 3.5 tubes of this 100 milligram toothpaste all in one sitting to get sick from it. Now, let's say that this was a child. Instead of weighing 70 kilograms, they actually weigh 20 kilograms. And that means that 20 times 5, the toxic dose is going to be 100 milligrams. So that means one full tube of toothpaste is enough to get them sick. But keep in mind, you're not supposed to eat toothpaste. You're actually supposed to spit it out. But even if you did accidentally eat some, you need to have a whole bunch of it to potentially get sick, let alone even kill you. And also keep in mind that anything can be bad at the right dose. Even drinking too much plain water, even without the fluoride, can kill you. Having too much oxygen in the air can kill you. The same thing with fluoride. If you have too much, obviously it's going to make you sick. Now, when it comes to killing you, the lethal dose for fluoride is about 32 milligrams per kilogram. So not 5 to get you sick, 32 milligrams per kilogram, that much to potentially kill you. Now, this 70 kilogram adult is going to have 22 tubes of toothpaste, again, all in one sitting. And this child, this 20 kilogram or 44 pound child, is going to have 6 tubes of toothpaste to potentially kill them. Again, all in one sitting. No one is going to sit there and do that unless they're crazy. And for people that say that, oh, you always swallow a little bit of toothpaste because you're putting it in your mouth. Well, let's look at some actual data to see how much fluoride people actually accidentally consume when brushing their teeth. So the estimated amounts of fluoride ingested daily from toothpaste for infants and up to 5 years old is going to be about 0.1 to 0.25 milligrams in a whole day. For people between 6 and 12 years old, it's about 0.2 to 0.3 milligrams. And for people older than 12 or adults, it's only about 0.1 milligrams. So the highest I saw there was the group between 6 and 12, and those people might even consume up to 0.3 milligrams a day. So what's the moral of the story? Brushing like normal with fluoride toothpaste and accidentally swallowing some isn't going to hurt you. But obviously, if you have a whole bunch of it at once, it can obviously make you really sick. But this is also why we kind of regulate how much toothpaste and how much fluoride kids should get. Kids under the age of 3 should only be using a really tiny grain-sized amount of toothpaste. And kids between 3 and 6 should only be using a pea-sized amount of toothpaste. Now keep in mind that dentists also only recommend using fluoride toothpaste if your kid is able to spit it out. If they're not able to really spit, then you shouldn't use a fluoride toothpaste yet. Now the other question I get is, what about long-term exposure to these small amounts of fluoride? Like, yeah, having a lot in one sitting is probably not going to hurt you, but what about having that little amount in your drinking water and in your toothpaste every single day, day after day? Look, I get the concern here. The main thing that could possibly happen from this, especially from drinking water and using your toothpaste, is skeletal fluorosis. Like I said, dental fluorosis isn't really a concern anymore because your teeth are done developing after the age of 8. But I will talk a little bit about skeletal fluorosis. Now, real quick, I do want to mention there are some people that mention that having fluoride can lower your IQ and do all sorts of other things. I will address that in a bit, but there are some problems with those studies. So just hang on for that point. Now, skeletal fluorosis is just like the name sounds. Instead of it affecting your teeth, it's actually affecting your bones. This happens from ingested fluoride. What happens is over the years, this is a long-term condition, that fluoride will accumulate in your bones. This can lead to a lot of stiffness, it can lead to joint pain, and in severe cases, it can cause bone deformities. Now keep in mind, this is a very rare condition, but this is also why the US keeps their water levels at a specific ppm of fluoride. But this still can happen simply from drinking water, especially in countries that do not regulate the fluoride. One thing to note that a lot of people don't understand about fluoride regulation is in some states, the US actually removes fluoride from the drinking water. A lot of people think that you're only adding fluoride to get to this 0.7 ppm number. But in some areas, the fluoride in the drinking water is already too high, and you have to remove it to get to that 0.7 number. And in other areas, yeah, they do add fluoride to get to that 0.7 ppm. But in some countries, it's not really regulated. For example, in certain parts of India and China, the fluoride levels in the drinking water are way higher, and they're not regulated. And people are much more prone to getting those severe cases of dental fluorosis, where you see those brown and pitting things that you probably saw images of on the internet, and also more prone to getting these skeletal deformities. So how much fluoride do you need to have every single day to potentially cause something like skeletal fluorosis? So what the studies show is if you have less than 4 milligrams a day, then you are safe. But if you start to have more, if you start to have 4 to 10 milligrams a day, then you're at risk for a mild form of skeletal fluorosis. And then if you have even more, if you have more than 10 milligrams a day, then you start to risk moderate to severe skeletal fluorosis. And keep in mind, this isn't just having that much fluoride in one day. You have to have this consistently, daily, for over a decade. All this data is for exposure over 10 years long. Now, these severe cases aren't really found in the US. Again, they're found in areas that don't really control the drinking water. And the fluoride levels in unregulated drinking water areas have more than double the amount of fluoride that's in the US. So let's say we're gonna focus on the US. How much drinking water would you have to even start approaching this mild number? So the key here is we wanna stay less than 4 milligrams in a day. Now let's say that in the US drinking water, we were keeping it at 1 ppm, just to keep it simple. It's actually at 0.7, but let's say we're keeping it at 1. What that means is for every liter of drinking water, there is 1 milligram of fluoride. So it's 1 milligram for every liter. So if you do simple math, that means you have to have 4 liters of water in a single day to start approaching that mild form of skeletal fluorosis. And you have to have this every single day for over 10 years. 4 liters is about 1.06 gallons of water. Now, some people might actually be drinking that much water a day. It's still a lot of water, but some people do that. But luckily in the US, that's actually 0.7 ppm. So this would mean you actually have to consume 5.7 liters or about 1.5 gallons of water. Now, I know I don't drink that much water a day, but if this is still a concern for you and you're concerned about approaching that number, then you might want to start looking into lowering your fluoride risk. The way you do that is you can get a filter on your water. There's some things like a reverse osmosis filter or other filters out there that might be able to limit the fluoride or even eliminate the fluoride from your drinking water. Because keep in mind, you're not just exposed to fluoride here, you're also exposed to it in other areas. Like black tea can have a lot of fluoride, different foods can have fluoride, and also your toothpaste, you might be ingesting a little bit from there. But I would say if you're not even close to approaching drinking this much water a day, like let's say you're drinking 0.7 gallons of water a day, which is still a decent amount, but that's probably how much I'd be drinking in a day, I wouldn't be concerned because you're not even close to that mild form of skeletal fluorosis. You're still considered in that safe zone. And this is based on studies that have been going on for over decades. So this is why I'm confidently telling you that I think you'll be fine. But I still want you to know the information so that you can make your own decision. If you want to limit your fluoride and start looking for alternative sources of toothpaste, or limit it at the dental chair, or limit it in your drinking water, there are ways of getting around it. I think the real key here is if you live in the US, for most people, skeletal fluorosis is not going to be a real concern, especially if you use things the way that they are prescribed or the way they are meant to be used, like not eating your toothpaste, actually spitting it out. And then also if you consume a normal amount of water. If you consume a ton of water every day and you're really concerned, again, we talked about that too, possibly using a fluoride filter. But also if you are concerned, you can check your water's fluoride levels. You can probably buy a test kit on Amazon or something that can check how much fluoride is in your drinking water. You can also possibly look up online and see your city and see what their levels of fluoride are. And actually, if you go online, there's other things you can check. You can check the amount of lead, you can check possibly mercury, you can check all sorts of things that are potentially in your drinking water. Again, if you're really concerned, get a filter. But if you do get a filter, I don't really think you need to limit your fluoride in your toothpaste as well. There's no need to limit your fluoride entirely because again, anything can be bad in a higher dose. Even these alternative toothpastes could have things that are bad in them. Actually, I made a different video talking about the differences between fluoride and nanohydroxyapatite toothpaste, which is a common fluoride alternative. So I'm putting a link in the description below if you want to learn about that. But I also wanted to address people's concerns about fluoride in the drinking water lowering people's IQ. A lot of these studies have a lot of problems. Either the dose is way too high and not really relatable to the US drinking water, or the sample size is super small where you can't really infer anything. What you want to keep in mind is who is telling you this information and are they trying to sell you something? Because hydroxyapatite toothpaste, for example, is very, very expensive. But a lot of times people use this fear and they try to scare you out of doing something that is considered normal, like using fluoride toothpaste. And then they might try to sell you something that is 10 times the price as a possible solution. So just keep those 2 cents in mind and try to just do a little bit of your own unbiased research. And if you really want to use a different product, by all means go for it. But just for example, this is a systematic review that I found that was looking at the toxicity of fluoride at the levels that humans are exposed to in Europe. What the study found was, based on the totality of currently available scientific evidence, the present review does not support the presumption that fluoride should be assessed as a human developmental neurotoxicant at the current exposure levels in Europe. So in other words, this was looking at Europe and their exposure levels to fluoride, and they found no evidence that it lowers their IQ. So all in all, fluoride is great, and it's done a lot of good things in preventing cavities for a lot of people. But it can have its drawbacks just like anything else, and you don't want to consume too much of it. And we talked a lot about in this video about how you might be consuming too much of it, but for most people, there's really no need to worry about it. And when it comes to dental fluorosis, you really only need to worry about it with your kids. So if you want to limit fluoride while their teeth are developing, by all means go for it. Just be careful that they're not getting any cavities. And again, I talk in a lot of my other videos about ways to keep your teeth clean other than just talking about fluoride, so make sure you check that content out too. As always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked that video. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel below, and I will see you in the next video. Have you ever noticed this swollen flap of gum tissue around your wisdom teeth? It might make your mouth pretty sore, it could make it harder to chew, and it could even make your breath smell bad. This is most likely something called pericoronitis, and that's basically when this gum tissue around your wisdom tooth or your most back tooth starts to get inflamed and